So what motivated us for this study is actually what's happening on the market with the manufacturers. Many of them are these days adopting what we call service-based business models. That means they are not selling to their customers only assets, but they started bundling their assets with all sorts of services. And these services can be anything from simple maintenance, preventive maintenance, to equipment diagnostics, or to much more complex multi-vendor solutions. And in general, manufacturers have two options how to deliver these solutions. They can do it on their own if they possess the internal capabilities, both asset and service-based. But very often they don't, particularly for very complex solutions. They have to reach outside in their network of service suppliers. And when they do that, what happens is that we get that interesting triangle between a manufacturer, a service supplier, and the customer, where all three of them are connected with the relationships, because essentially manufacturers has to let the service supplier to interact directly with the customer. And in this particular arrangement, the satisfaction of the customer is really a function of how well these three parties work together. So in this study particularly, we were looking what are the implications of the way how manufacturer manages its relationship with the service supplier for a service performance towards manufacturer's customers. So what we propose in this study is that superior service performance of a service supplier is not just a simple function of whether manufacturer manages to build a collaborative or non-collaborative transactional relationship. We know from practice that relationships are much more complex, much more granular. That's why we adopted what we call a Cannon and Perot's framework of relationship connectors, where we were examining that relationship between the manufacturer and service supplier along the information exchange, operational linkages, legal bonds, cooperative norms, and adaptations. So what we were assuming here is that there will be more than one combination of these factors that will equifinally enhance service supplier's performance. In order for us to be able to identify the configurations of relationship connectors that lead to superior service performance, we adopted an analytical technique called FSQCA. So FSQCA stands for Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis, and it uses what we call a set theoretic logic to identify relationships between outcome variables and a set of antecedents. It requires two essential steps. The first step is measure calibration, and the second step is configurational analysis. In order for us to be able to calibrate the measures, we had to generate a substantial knowledge about the context of our inquiry. And for this reason, we conducted a qualitative inquiry in 3 case studies with 35 interviews. And one of the outcomes, in addition to generating this substantive knowledge, was also the emergence of 2 exogenous factors that also impact the service performance. The first one was the site size. This is the size of a service supplier, and the second is contract support, or the revenue that a service supplier generates from the fixed service contracts. Now, after that, we then developed a quantitative data collection instrument, and we also collected the quantitative data from 38 triads. So in line with our predictions, we found out there is no single factor that is necessary condition for superior service performance. We in fact uncovered 4 distinct configurations of relationship connectors that equifinally lead to superior service performance. We named them sanguine, pliant coordinator, kindly servicing, and professional. So we summarized the findings of FSQCA analysis in the table that you can see here on the screen in front of you. So the black circles, the big black circles here represents the presence of the core causal conditions, where the small one represents the presence of contributing causal conditions. The big circle with the X signifies the absence of core causal condition, and the small one with the X represents the absence of contributing causal condition. So how to read now these configurations? If we go, for example, to the first one, the sanguine, a relationship that is characterized by presence of adaptations, but the absence of legal bonds, in combination with the site size and the large proportion of revenues coming from the fixed service contracts, will actually finally lead to superior service performance as any other free either plant coordinator, kindly servicing, or professional configuration. So our findings suggest that operational linkages, absence of legal bonds, relationship adaptations, and contract support activities all lead towards superior service performance. One configuration that actually surprised us was the one that is named professional, which suggests that if the site size, meaning that if service supplier is large, is relatively big, and have a high proportion of revenues from fixed service contracts, it can be less reliant on relational relationships. However, we would still encourage them, encourage manufacturers and suppliers to create relationships around operational linkages and relationship adaptations. So in terms of the future of our research, we propose two directions. The first one, it would be interesting to see whether similar configurations would emerge also in other industries, and particularly for other types of services rather than complex ones. The second direction is more methodological one, namely with this research we introduced FSQCA in the operations and supply chain management field. Now our field is full of causally complex phenomena, and we truly hope that by doing so we lay ground for other researchers to explore those phenomena in the future and utilize FSQCA, because it's indeed a very interesting and very useful methodological approach. Thank you very much.